There's a mushroom in the rainforest that can hijack an ant's brain, march it to its death, and explode from its skull like something from a horror film, and that's just the beginning. Welcome to Stellar Eureka. Today we are venturing into the bizarre world of mushrooms that defy every rule you thought you knew about what grows from the ground. We'll meet fungi that look like alien hands clawing from the soil, and organisms colored in shades nature supposedly reserved for flowers and gemstones. These fungi are thriving right here on Earth, hidden in forests, gardens, and woodland edges. And before we're done, we'll meet something so strange it forced scientists to rewrite what life itself can be, an organism that moves, thinks, and learns without a brain. The fungal kingdom is stranger than fiction, and these 10 species prove it. If you've only seen brown mushrooms poking through leaf litter, prepare to have your expectations shattered. The indigo blue cap doesn't fade into the forest floor. It commands attention with a blue so saturated it looks photoshopped. We're talking electric azure, the kind of color you'd expect from a tropical fish, not something growing in moss. These tiny fungi rarely exceed an inch across, but their pigment is so intense they practically glow against the dark greens and decomposing bark of New Zealand's rainforests. This isn't a fluke of lighting or seasonal variation. The mushroom maintains that vivid blue throughout its entire life cycle thanks to azulene derivatives, the same rare compounds that color certain jellyfish and marine invertebrates. While most mushrooms bleach and fade with age, the indigo blue cap stays true to its name until the very end. New Zealand takes this mushroom seriously enough to print it on their $50 banknote, making it one of the only fungi in the world granted that honor. But beyond national pride, it serves a practical purpose. Conservation scientists use it as an indicator species. Find these sapphire caps and you've found an undisturbed, healthy forest, the increasingly rare kind. The air is damp and heavy with moss, and that blue glow feels almost electric against the forest floor. For mycologists and photographers trekking through New Zealand's backcountry, spotting one remains a legitimate prize. Its small size means you could walk past a dozen without noticing, but once you see that blue, you'll never forget it. From a glow of electric blue to something far darker, the next mushroom bleeds where it stands. When a mushroom looks like it's been stabbed, you pay attention. The bleeding tooth fungus confronts you with thick, blood-red droplets beating across its pale surface like something bleeding out in slow motion. These aren't stains or decay. The mushroom actively oozes this crimson liquid through its pores, glistening under forest light in a way that stops hikers in their tracks. It's the kind of sight that makes you pull out your phone because nobody will believe you otherwise. This bleeding happens through guttation. The fungus is essentially sweating out excess moisture it absorbed from the soil, but here's where it gets interesting. That red fluid isn't just pigmented water. It contains a natural anticoagulant chemically similar to heparin, the blood thinner used in hospitals worldwide. The same mushroom that looks like a victim is producing compounds that prevent clotting. Researchers are now studying it for potential pharmaceutical applications, particularly as an alternative to synthetic blood thinners. The mushroom itself forms partnerships with pine and spruce trees across North American and European conifer forests, trading nutrients through underground networks. As it ages, the bleeding stops, the cap darkens to brown, and the underside develops the tooth-like spines that give it the second half of its name. By that point, though, it's lost its shock value. The bleeding phase is what turns heads. Despite looking toxic enough to kill on contact, it's technically not poisonous, just brutally bitter. Your garden smells like a crime scene, and when you follow the stench, you find what looks like a demon clawing out of the soil. This is how most people meet the octopus stinkhorn. Not through field guides or nature walks, but through their nose in their own backyard. Those red tentacles are designed to stink. Flies interpret the reek as food, land on the slime, and pick up spores. The fungus gets transported. Simple, effective, revolting. It's native to Australia but now grows across multiple continents. A stowaway success story that began with World War I supply shipments. 4 to 8 blood-red tentacles burst from an egg-like sac and splay outward like fingers grasping for air. Each arm drips with dark olive-brown slime that reeks of rotting flesh, detectable from yards away. This is the rare mushroom that assaults 2 senses simultaneously: the visual horror of alien appendages and the olfactory nightmare of roadkill left in the sun. French soldiers called it devil's fingers when it appeared in the countryside. The fungus had likely arrived in Europe hidden among wartime supply shipments, its spores hitching rides across continents before anyone realized. Standing over one on a warm day and you'll understand why. Today it thrives in wood chip mulch, gardens, and disturbed soil across Europe and North America. Homeowners discover it with a mix of revulsion and fascination, often posting frantic photos to identification forums with the universal question, "What the hell is this?" Turn off your flashlight. Let your eyes adjust. Wait. The forest floor begins to glow, not everywhere, just in patches. Tiny green lights emerge from rotting logs like something is waking up beneath the bark. These are green glow caps, barely half an inch across, unremarkable in daylight, but transformed after dark into living lanterns. The glow is soft, persistent, and strange. Not bright enough to navigate by, but bright enough to make you question what you're seeing. Gather enough of them and you could technically read by their light, though you'd need patience and a tolerance for eerie green ambiance. The light comes from luciferin, the same compound fireflies use, but instead of flashing, the mushroom glows continuously throughout the night. Scientists suspect it's advertising. The green wavelength is highly visible to nocturnal insects, which land on the caps and spread spores. The glow intensifies during peak spore production, turning each mushroom into a tiny beacon saying, "Here, land here." In Japan, they're called foxfire, and tangled into folklore about forest spirits. In Brazil's subtropical forest, they dot the jungle floor like crash-landed stars. Photographers spend hours in humid darkness waiting to capture them because a photo of glowing mushrooms sounds fake until you see the real thing. While some mushrooms glow, others take a more sinister approach by hijacking brains and controlling bodies like puppet masters. This is a fungus in the rainforest that hijacks the brain of its host and controls its final moments like a puppeteer. Microscopic spores land on a carpenter ant, penetrate its exoskeleton, and spread. Within days, the fungus invades the ant's brain and releases chemicals that override everything the ant knows. The infected ant abandons its colony, climbs to exactly 1 foot above the ground, the perfect height for fungal growth, and clamps its jaws onto a leaf in a death grip. Then, it dies. Days later, a stalk erupts from the back of the ant's head and releases spores onto the ants below. New host, the cycle repeats. This has been happening for 48 million years, we know, because fossilized leaves show those same distinctive bite marks. Different Ophiocordyceps species target specific ant species with surgical precision. Each fungus evolved to manipulate one particular host. The control is disturbingly precise. Infected ants climb at solar noon when temperature and humidity are optimal for fungal growth. Scientists studying this manipulation have uncovered how parasites can chemically rewrite neural pathways, research with implications far beyond rainforest ants. This fungus inspires video game plot lines and serious neurological research alike, revealing how deeply one organism can control another. Scattered across meadows and forest edges, an increasingly rare fungus appears for just days each fall, and when it does, it stops mushroom hunters in their tracks. The violet coral fungus defies everything you expect from a mushroom. No caps, no stems, just clusters of delicate purple branches rising from the soil like miniature coral reefs, transplanted onto land. Each branch forks and divides as it climbs 2 to 3 inches tall, ranging from pale lavender to deep violet. Against green grass or brown leaf litter, they're impossible to miss, and equally impossible to collect. The branches are so fragile they crumble at the slightest touch, which is probably for the best since they're inedible anyway. What makes them worth finding isn't taste, but rarity. Unlike decomposer fungi that feed on dead material, violet coral forms partnerships with living plant roots, helping entire communities of plants thrive in exchange for sugars. This mycorrhizal relationship makes them ecosystem indicators. When you spot them, you're looking at healthy soil and intact habitat. But climate shifts and habitat loss have made sightings increasingly uncommon across their European, Asian, and North American range, especially in late summer and fall when they typically appear. Photographing a cluster before it vanishes within days has become a minor trophy for nature enthusiasts, proof you're in the right place at exactly the right time. The most famous mushroom on Earth earned its reputation through a combination of stunning beauty and profound danger, appearing in everything from fairy tales to shamanic rituals to Viking legends. The fly agaric's scarlet cap dotted with white spots looks like it was painted by a children's book illustrator, and it probably was. This is the mushroom of fairy tales, video games, and Christmas cards. Young specimens emerge wrapped in a white veil that tears as the cap expands to 8 inches across, leaving behind those iconic white patches on vivid red. The thick white stem sports a skirt-like ring, and the whole package signals both invitation and warning. That duality runs through human history. Indigenous Siberian shamans consumed it in controlled rituals, experiencing visions they interpreted as spiritual journeys. The red and white clad shamans delivered these gifts through smoke holes in winter yurts, and their reindeer companions actively sought out the fungi, a tradition some historians link to Santa Claus imagery, though this remains speculative. Medieval Europeans took a more practical approach. They crushed it into milk to poison flies, giving the mushroom its common name. The mushroom's components, muscimol and ibotenic acid, cause hallucinations, euphoria, and distorted perceptions of size and time, effects that some believed inspired Alice in Wonderland. Despite its toxicity to humans, reindeer, squirrels, and slugs consume it regularly, apparently tolerating or even seeking its psychoactive properties. It's now protected in some European countries due to over-harvesting, a conservation status reserved for a mushroom that's become more cultural icon than mere fungus. The most widespread mushroom on Earth isn't rare, exotic, or even particularly beautiful. It's a small, fuzzy survivor that colonized every continent except Antarctica through sheer resilience. Split gill fungus grows as fan-shaped, paper-thin brackets on dead wood, often in overlapping clusters covered with fine, whitish hairs. Flip one over and you'll see its namesake feature. Gills split lengthwise down their centers, creating a forked appearance unlike any other mushroom. But the real trick happens when conditions turn harsh. Let these mushrooms dry out completely, curled, brittle, apparently dead, then add moisture, and within hours they unfurl and resume spore production as if nothing happened. This resurrection ability lets them survive where other fungi simply die. That superpower, combined with tolerance for extreme heat, near freezing cold, and every type of wood from fence posts to fallen branches, explains their world domination. But there's another factor. Scientists recently discovered this fungus has over 28,000 distinct mating types, more than any other known organism. While humans have 2 biological sexes and most fungi have thousands of mating types, split gill's unmatched genetic diversity gives it an enormous advantage in adapting to new environments and colonizing hostile territory. In China and India, people have traditionally eaten young specimens despite their tough, leathery texture. but medical researchers have documented something more concerning. Split gill is one of the few mushrooms that can become an opportunistic pathogen, causing sinus and lung infections in people with compromised immune systems. A survivor so successful it's found on wooden buildings worldwide, and occasionally where it doesn't belong. So convincing in their resemblance to blackened human fingers that people have called the police, thinking they'd found remains of a crime scene. Dead man's fingers emerges in clusters so disturbingly anatomical that your first instinct is to look away. Dark, club-shaped structures twist and bend like decomposing digits, clawing up from beneath rotting stumps, often sprouting in groups of 3 to 6 that mimic a hand frozen mid-grasp. The fruiting bodies are charcoal black or deep brown with rough, warty surfaces that heighten the corpse-like resemblance. When young, their tips are pale gray or white as if dusted with ash or touched by decay. They can grow up to 4 inches tall, and the illusion is so complete that there are real reports of hikers calling police after mistaking them for human remains. This fungus specializes in breaking down dead hardwood throughout North America and Europe, particularly beech, maple, and elm. The fingers above ground are just reproductive structures. Beneath the surface, networks of thread-like mycelium may have been working for years, dismantling fallen logs or attacking dying tree roots. Slice one open and you'll find white flesh dotted with tiny black chambers holding thousands of spores. The spores are released through flask-shaped chambers embedded in the surface, ejecting microscopic projectiles into the air. Each finger produces millions of spores over several months, ensuring the next generation finds suitable deadwood to colonize. While harmless to humans and completely inedible due to woody toughness, the psychological impact is real. For mushroom hunters, stumbling upon a cluster is always jarring. The resemblance never quite fades, no matter how many times you've seen them. From fingers that disturb to a shape that makes most people laugh uncomfortably, our final fungus is nature's crudest joke. Here is where we cheat just a little, because what we're about to show you isn't technically a mushroom or even a fungus, but it's so bizarre it demanded a spot on this list. It exists as a single giant cell, one cell that can sprawl several feet across, with thousands of nuclei pulsing through a network of veins you can see with the naked eye. The bright yellow mass creeps across forest floors and rotting logs at up to an inch per hour, extending arm-like pseudopods as it hunts bacteria and fungal spores. Watch it long enough and you'll see something unsettling. Purposeful movement from an organism with no brain, no nervous system, no neurons whatsoever. Place oat flakes at opposite ends of a maze and the slime mold finds the shortest path between them, essentially solving a spatial problem that challenges organisms with actual brains. Expose it repeatedly to a harmless substance it initially avoided, and it learns to ignore the false threat, demonstrating memory without biological structures for storing memories. When conditions deteriorate or food runs out, it transforms into its fruiting body stage, producing stalked structures topped with spore-filled capsules that look remarkably like tiny mushrooms, which is probably why people kept confusing it with fungi for so long. Japanese researchers used this ability to model the Tokyo rail system. They placed oat flakes at major city locations and watched the organism create a transportation network nearly identical to the engineered railway, but more efficient. Physarum polycephalum forces scientists to reconsider what intelligence actually requires. It's been sent to space, studied for biocomputing applications, and proposed as a living model for understanding decision-making without consciousness. Sometimes awareness emerges from simpler systems than we ever imagined possible. From fungi that resurrect themselves to organisms that glow, bleed, and even hijack minds, these 10 species prove that the strangest life on Earth isn't hiding in the deep ocean or outer space, it's thriving right under our feet. These mushrooms decompose our forests, illuminate our nights, inspire our folklore, and remind us that nature's imagination will always exceed our own. In a world we think we've fully cataloged and understood, fungi continue to surprise us, unsettle us, and fill us with wonder. They don't just grow, they adapt, invade, and remind us that nature's imagination is far stranger than our own. Which of these would make you stop dead in your tracks if you found it on a forest walk? This is Stella Eureka, signing off.